So I wanted to take some time to create our first project video. This project today is going to be about drawing what you can see outside your window. As you had responded to our scavenger hunt, I was looking at those pictures of your supplies, I was noticing a lot of crayons, a lot of colored pencils, and some watercolor paints. For this project, the materials that I would recommend, if you have them, would be to use a crayon colored pencil or oil pastel. Those drawing supplies work really nicely with watercolor paint. If though you do not have some of those supplies, it is okay. You do not need to go out and buy anything, just use what you have. So I want to show you what I made, and I did two versions from looking outside my window. So the first one I did during the day when the sun was still up. The second picture I did after the sun had already started setting. You can see the colors are different between the two. You don't have to make two pictures. You could choose to draw either a nighttime, daytime, sunset picture, or if you wanted that extra challenge, you could go ahead and do two. Okay, so I have some tape here that I'm going to start with. I'm going to attach my paper to my table. So I'm just going to start by laying down some of my tape. I want to make it even on the edges. There we go, right down in the middle. So now I have one side of my paper and I have the second side of my paper. So then at this point, I have my paper divided and it's ready to go. I brought color sticks from school. These are like colored pencils, but in a crayon form. You could use regular crayons if you have oil pastels. The reason why we want to use crayons, colored pencils, or oil pastels is these are all waxy materials. So the wax, when you are drawing it on your paper, it has the color, so like this would be orange. Then later when we go over it with our watercolor paints, the color of the drawing tool that you used is still going to show up. So I have a good view right now outside of my window, straight in front of me. And I'm going to use that to guide my drawing. So I'm looking out ahead and I see the line of the trees. So I'm going to draw my field out there as I see it, and I'm going to draw the tops of my trees. All right, and then I'm also going to draw where I see the road starting. And then I have my pond that's outside my window. All right, so I have my field drawn, I have the road, and I'm going to start adding in some clouds. I'm going to use either a white crayon or a white color stick. I'm also going to use this to draw the sun. The sun is so bright that it doesn't look yellow. It just looks like a very bright white light. So I'm going to draw in the circle. And I'm going to draw some lines coming out of the sun, like rays of sunlight. And I'm bringing them down my paper. So at kindergarten, we've talked about some of the different parts of trees. You have the trunk that you're drawing. The trunk is a little bit bigger. And then you have the branches coming off of it. So I'm going to go through and draw my trunk. I'm going to make my trunk a little bit bigger on the bottom, and then I'm going to draw these branches coming off of the trunk. I can even add branches then coming off of those branches. Makes it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to go all the way down my paper, and I'm going to add some of these trees that I see outside my window. All right, from there, I'm going to take a lighter brown and I'm going to just draw some trees behind it. So we've talked about in the art room how objects that are closer to you are darker. So I'm drawing some lighter colored trees in the background. Again, I'm drawing the trunk first. Then I'm adding some branches coming off of that tree trunk. All right, there we go. So I have some trees drawn. I could add a few more in here if I would like. I could even add some tree branches that are sticking up above, like it's coming from trees behind. Kind of just adding some little short lines in between. Can draw some other tree trunks back there. Okay, so then because it's spring, the grass is still light, so I'm going to still use my light brown, and I'm just going to add some grass texture. So I'm doing little short lines. I'm going to add some longer lines up close to make the grass look like it's a little taller. I think I'm going to do that also with some white, because again, when we paint over it, then these little invisible lines are going to show up. Okay, and then I'm going to take a little bit of the green. I think I just have a dark green in my set. As I'm looking outside, I see just a little bit of green next to the road. And I think I really like how that rubbing texture looks. I think I'm going to add that up here into my forest. I'm going to add in some cattails. So I'm going to use my lighter color, and I'm going to just draw some longer pieces. All right, so the thing that makes cattails is they have this darker brown part. All right, there we go. And lastly, I'm taking a look at the water. And I'm going to do the same thing again with the white. I want to reflect the sun down here, so this would be an extra special detail that you could add, where I'm drawing the sun in the water, drawing some of the lines coming out. Okay, so at this point I have finished my drawing. If all you have at home are dry drawing tools like crayons or colored pencils, you could leave your artwork at this. If you do have extra materials, I want to show you and your families how to add watercolor paints over it. I saw lots of your photos at home show you do have some watercolor paints. So I don't have any color yet on my brush. I am just putting water in the whole area that I want the sky. Okay, now I'm going to swirl my brush in the blue, and I'm going to paint it in. And you can see my sun is starting to show. There we go, so now I have my pond painted and my sky. I'm going to give my sky a little bit of time to dry along the edge. So I'm actually going to paint in my road next because it is next to two dry spots. For the older kids, you might notice some shadows out there. So I can paint one side of my road a little bit darker. Now it is springtime, it's pretty early in our season, so none of the trees that I'm looking at outside my window have leaves on them. It just looks like the whole area is a very light brown. Okay, so I've let my picture dry. I am going to go in and I want to paint this grass area next. And you can see the line coming across the page showing the sun rays. And so I just think that's a really cool little touch that I was able to add. So after you draw your picture, I'd love for you to post it on Seesaw and tell me one thing that you love about your drawing. So now what I'm going to show you is an extra challenge. We created our picture for during the daytime. This was about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, so the sun was still up, the colors were still fairly light, they were more true to color, like green grass, brown trees. Now though, I've waited for the sun to go down, so colors have changed outside. So as an extra challenge, you can draw the same view out of your window, but doing this now at night. So I'm going to use some different colors. I'm going to use some darker color sticks. I think I'm going to start with a gray. I'm going to draw the same picture that is on my daytime side as the nighttime. And the only thing I'm going to change then are the colors that I use and the placement of the sun. Now that I've drawn this in gray, I am looking outside my view and I'm noticing that everything now has this purplish color to it. So I'm going to draw my trees with the tree trunks, and again I'm going to draw the same exact thing, so I should have about the same number of trees. I think I'm going to draw some trees in the purple. I'm going to use my purple again, add some longer grass up close. I'm going to use the side of my purple and add some shadow. And now I can still see some of the green because there's still a little bit of sunlight. So I am going to go back in now and I am going to add some green to my grass. Since I've started drawing, some clouds have moved into the sky. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to draw some of those clouds that are now out there. I'm going to draw the clouds in gray. Before we did clouds in white during the daytime, but now that it's nighttime, the clouds have a shadow. All right, and then I'm going to add some rays of sunlight coming up from behind the tree. And I'm going to have a couple rays of light going through the pictures. So I've colored over everything in purple. Get a little bit of yellow, just a tiny bit. Clean my brush. I'm going to get a little bit of orange in there. Now I'm going to get into the red. And the red and the blue will mix to make a little bit of purple. Now if I want this top part of my sky to be even darker, I can bring in a little bit of purple. Actually, now I'm going to take a look at my pond, and I want my pond to reflect what's going on in the sky. And I'm going to jump to the grass. And I think I'm going to make my grass that lighter brown still. And if I want to give it kind of still a shadow, I can get a little bit of blue on my brush and blend that in too. A little bit of blue is going to make it look more like nighttime. So I've blended the blue right on top of the brown paint, and I'm blending it right into the green paint. Okay, so I waited a few minutes for everything to dry, and now I'm going to go back and I'm going to paint in my road, my grass, and my trees. I think I'm going to start with my road first. So I'm going to get a little bit of gray or black on my brush, but I have more water on it. So I think my project turned out pretty nice. My next step is to take a picture of it and upload it onto Seesaw so that way all my teachers can see it. Alright artists, so that is all that I have for you today with this project. I'm excited to see what materials you have at home and what drawings you make from looking out your window. Just a reminder though, for all these projects, it is okay for you to use different tools and materials that you have at home.